You are listening to episode number 62 of the Everything Ham Radio podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the International Beacon Network as well as the North California DX Foundation. We're going to have a special guest on to talk to us about that. We're going to talk about some upcoming events and contests as hamfests over the next 2 weeks. Got a neat little video on YouTube that I found I want to tell you all about. And we're going to wrap it up with some news from around the hobby. So stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. My name is Curtis, my call sign is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike, and I am your host for this podcast. This podcast is released every Thursday morning. You can find it at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/62. That'll give you the actual episode as well as all the show notes, all the links, and everything we're going to talk about in today's episode. You can find me on Facebook in my Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/everythinghamradio. I have a page as well, facebook.com/everythinghamradio. I am on YouTube at youtube.com/everythinghamradio and on Twitter at K6TD. So today, like I said, we're going to be talking about the International DX Beacon Network. We're going to talk about the Northern California DX Foundation. We have a special guest today. His name is Kevin Rowett, Kilo 6 Tango Delta. He is a board member with the foundation, and we got a lot of great information about it. But first off, I want to thank everybody for your responses to the Facebook question of the week. Today, this week's question actually comes from a listener. So I'm gonna. He actually sent me a voicemail on SpeakPipe, which if you have a question that you want answered, or just want to leave a comment or anything like that, if you go to the website everythinghamradio.com, on the right hand side there's a little button that you can press and it will take you to the SpeakPipe app, or allow you to record a voicemail message to me. So the question comes from a gentleman by the name of Will Turk, and here is what he has to say.
Yeah, I heard your podcast for the first time. I enjoy your podcast. I would like to make a suggestion or maybe a request. For some of us ham radio operators that are new to HF, HS is new to us. Maybe you know how you list the hamfest and different stuff like that. Could you list maybe some of the popular fixed frequency nets they have, maybe like traders nets, or some of the HF nets, so we can kind of find them on the frequency if we don't know where they're located? Maybe the list of popular nets, HF nets. Okay, appreciate it. Have a good day. Like I say, enjoy your broadcast.
All right, so thanks, Will, for your submission of your question there. Unfortunately, I don't really know a whole lot of nets on HF. I'm not a real big HF person. However, I'm sure there are plenty of listeners out there that can answer Will's question. So his question is going to be the question of the week, the Facebook question of the week. So head on over to facebook.com/groups/everythinghamradio. And you'll see the question there listed. Please help Will out on locating some fixed time frequency nets that him and any other new people, and for me as well, because I'm working on getting my HF up, and I really would like to talk on HF a little bit more. So leave a comment answering that question in today's Facebook question of the week. One more thing before we get to the interview of today. Y'all might notice a little difference in today's episode. Maybe some of the levels are not just right. I want to apologize up front for that. I just got a brand new computer. My Wi-Fi went out on my other computer, and it was like 6-7 years old anyways, and it was about time to replace. I know y'all have heard me saying it many times before, but thanks to a new sponsor that I will announce next episode, I was able to get me a new computer. So hopefully this works out a whole lot better than before, and I'm going to be working continually to get this all the sound levels and stuff the way that they should be. So please bear with me. Don't don't hit me or kill me or something like that if it's just not right. But yeah, so I am working on that. And this episode is going to be the first one that I'm kind of going to go interview style with. I have several of them that I'm working on. I don't know if I'm going to do just total interview or if I'm going to go interview and then solo. Probably what I'll end up doing, at least for the foreseeable future. Might just go interview if I can. But anyways, please help me welcome Ken Rowett, Kilo 6 Tom Delta, board member of the Northern California DX Foundation. So let's see what Kevin has to say. Hey everybody, today we are talking with Kevin Rowett, Kilo 6 Tango Delta. He is a board member with the Northern California DX Foundation. How are you this evening, Kevin?
I'm good, Curtis. Good to talk with you about the foundation and the beacons.
Yeah, I actually just kind of stumbled upon it a couple weeks ago. I was doing some research a little bit and was trying to figure out what exactly the DX beaconing was. And we're going to talk, I think, a little bit about that a little bit later. But first off, while I was looking at it, I came across your foundation. Can you tell me a little bit about what it is and what it does and how it got started and stuff like that?
Yeah, I can. So the Northern California DX Foundation has been around since 1972. Originally started by Vince Chin. Now his call sign is W6EE, W6 Echo Echo. Its purpose is to serve as a funding source for extremely rare and ambitious de-expeditions. And the places these people go are generally pretty hard to get to, or they're expensive. And they're almost always rare. By rare means how far up they are on the most wanted list, either from the DX magazine or from now Club Log. We classically fund expeditions that are within the top 25, and we really look for the top 10 needed locations to go to.
Wow. So what have y'all funded here recently?
We have funded almost every major expedition that an HFDXer would hear about. So the Juan de Novo Island, the Fox Tango 4 Juliet Alpha, and certainly the Palmyra, the K5 Papa, and then Herd Island, VK0 Echo Kilo, and then the two BP8 South Sandwich and South Georgia expeditions that N6 PSE Paul Ewing did earlier this year. There hasn't been too much in the later parts of this year, mostly because of the band conditions. So those are the ones we did in 2016.
That's just amazing. So how do y'all raise money to do the funding and stuff? Is it all donations, or do y'all have like corporate sponsors or something like that?
It's all donations. The fund originally got started by a major donation from the original founders of the club or of the foundation, and then different groups have provided either large grants to it or individual grants. So right now, most of the funding is made up of people contributing between $50 and $200 a piece. So we consider these folks members.
Awesome.
That makes up the bulk of the fund.
So speaking of the initial donation there when it got started, how did the Northern California DX Foundation get started?
Yeah, it was basically Vince Chin, now W6EE, sitting around his kitchen table with Don Schlesinger, Jack Troster, and one other, Lee Shakely, the primary funder, said, there should be a way to fund or provide money and backing for people that are making DX trips, because they can be expensive. And so the initial foundation was a $250,000 endowment. This was in 1970.
Wow.
Yeah. And then there's been people that we're currently working on what we call the Cycle 25 Fund to gain money for the range of expeditions we expect to come up in as soon as Cycle 25 peaks. So we're raising money for that. We've had people put in their wills to fund, to provide their endowment to the fund when they die, or others, in the order of $100,000, $200,000.
Wow.
So we don't expect that from everybody, but
right.
a couple big runners helps a lot.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah, an expedition to a faraway place like Herd Island can cost each participant upwards of $20,000.
Oh my!
And there's classically 14 participants in an expedition like that, mostly because it's the hard to reach places are usually Southern Ocean islands, Herd Island, South Sandwich, Chesterfield, and so there's a particularly popular boat that most people rent to actually go there, and that boat happens to hold 14 people. So when you're thinking about going somewhere, you think, okay, which 14 people can I get to join me, or 13 people to join me, and is the boat available for that time?
Right.
And then you go. So the interesting one that's coming up in 2017, or probably early 2018 now, it looks like, is Beauvais Island. It's number 2 on the most wanted list. So that's probably the most interesting one coming up. Very difficult to reach. I think it's a 6 or 7 day sail there.
Wow. So you mentioned a couple of times on this most wanted list. Where is this most wanted list can be found at?
Primarily, it's the best place to find it right now is a site called Clublog, www.clublog.org. And how it works is, I mean, the way Most Wanted was worked before is people would contribute their logs to the DX magazine run by November 4 Alpha, and he would tally up which countries were most needed based on how many people didn't have it in their log. And with the rest of the modern age, this has all become computerized, so now you just simply upload your log after you work a DXpedition, and the database automatically accumulates the most wanted list based on how many people need somebody in their log. So they take a list of all the countries, and then they count how many people actually have a contact with that, and the fewer the number, the higher the rank you are on the most wanted list.
Wow.
Presently, the number 1 position on the most wanted list is North Korea, Papa 5. It's been that way for some time. And countries rise pretty high on the most wanted list for 2 reasons. One of 2 reasons, or it could be both of them. The first is it's very hard to get there. So it's a $250,000 or maybe a $500,000 expedition to get there, which was true for South Sandwich and Herd Island. The other is it may be difficult to get permission to operate there.
Mm-hmm.
And so P5 is easy to get to. It's a fly-in. You can fly there for less than $300, but you cannot get permission to operate there. The current government just won't let anybody operate ham radio from North Korea.
Wow. I'm actually on the website now looking at all the different places. There's things like Yemen and Iran and the Republic of Congo, several ways down the list, but like the top 50 is like pretty much all islands.
They're hard to get to.
Yeah. Huh.
So that's the reason they're islands. That's why islands show up, because they're hard to get to, and almost all these are uninhabited islands. So, or they're restricted to get to. So Kilo Nancy, Navasu Island, in January 2015, that's very easy to get to. Because it's just off the coast of Puerto Rico, but it's controlled by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and they won't let anybody on it. So a group of people worked for about 10 years to finally get permission to travel to that island.
That's very interesting. I must admit, the DXing is not really a whole lot of my forte, so I'm glad I'm actually finally talking to somebody that actually knows what they're talking about. So as far as
DXing is a passion.
Yeah, I imagine just like anything else in this hobby, you take a certain part of this hobby and you tend to go with it. I mean, for me, it's community service. I mean, that's why I got into it. That's basically what I do. Of course, now this podcast, but DXing it sounds to be a beast of its own and a very expensive one to do. It seems. Well,
there's 2 groups of people that participate in DXing. One is the DX operator, and his goal is to work somebody in every country. Mm-hmm. that's not terribly expensive. That's no more expensive than anyone else operating HF.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a de-expeditioner, traveling to these countries to put the country on the air can be expensive.
Yeah.
There's about 200 people within the HF community that typically travel to these locations. So for those group of people, it's their passion.
Right. So when you fund a de-expedition, I mean, do you fund the whole group and you just do like a portion of it, or does each individual have to put in an application to get like a scholarship type thing or something, or how does that work?
So classically, what we do is we will provide a small amount of money, somewhere between $5,000 and $50,000 to a de-expedition based on their need. So a de-expedition will get organized. There's classically a leader of that expedition and a treasurer, and they will fill out an application and transmit it to the Northern California DX Foundation Board of Directors. And we'll look at the need, how well it's organized, the history of the operators, and decide that it's a good use of the money from the foundation to fund it.
Okay. So how if say I was setting up a de-expedition, where would I get the paperwork for the application, and who would I send it to?
So usually you organize your expedition first, where you're going to go. You get the permits to go there. You get permits to land, permits to operate. You get your team together, and you figure out what it's going to cost for you to do that. You get your boat signed up, the crew signed up that's going to go with you. You know, the other operators, determine your equipment plan. Then once you have that done, you usually begin asking for donations by clubs and individuals. Mm-hmm. So classically, a group that's planning on going somewhere, for example, currently Bouvet Island, they have a website and a way that you can contribute money to that. So they will also fill out an application from the NCDXF.org website with specific information that we ask for. There's a menu button on the left-hand side about 2/3 of the way down called Grant Application. And you just simply fill it out and hit send, and it will get sent to the board of directors of the foundation.
Okay. So
and then the foundation.
Sorry about that. I'm going to have links in the show notes of today's episode where you can find the North California DX Foundation. But can you go ahead and give us the web address?
www.ncdxf.org.
Super easy there. Northern California DX Foundation .org. So make sure you check that out. And if you have any other questions, I'm sure that Kevin or any other board members would happy to answer for you. And there's a whole lot of information on their website as well. Is there anything else that you want to say about the foundation or anything like the history or anything like that before we take a quick break?
Yeah, sure. The foundation is made up of board members that are volunteers, is everyone on the organization. It's, we're always looking for people to help with things. And certainly donations and contributions are important. And we're always very willing to talk with anybody about helping them get a de-expedition started. All the members on the board have traveled multiple times on de-expeditions. So we're here to make de-expeditions as practical as we can.
So where have you gone?
I have been to Midway Island, which is the last Hawaiian island, so to speak. You can't get to it real easily, but it was a very well-known place in World War II, mm-hmm. The Battle of the Midway. I've been to Mozambique, and then I've also been to Chesterfield Island. And due to the birth of a grandson, I missed going to South Sandwich.
I'm sure that was well worth missing it, though.
Yeah, it was.
So, alrighty, well, very good. I think we'll go ahead and take a quick break, and we're going to come back. We're going to talk about the International Beacon Project, so we'll be right back. So I'd like to thank my sponsor of this podcast, West Mountain Radio. They've been with me now for about 3 months. For those of you who don't know who they are, they make some awesome equipment that I've had the pleasure of using for over 15 years or so now. They make several pieces of equipment that are so well built and are so useful. Things like the Rig Blaster, the Rig Runner, and what I want to talk to y'all about today, the DC-to-go boxes. These things are awesome little boxes. You put a battery in it and they protect your station floor from an unfortunate battery accident. However, there's so much more to them as well. These boxes have a Super PowerGate PG40 as well as a Rig Runner mounted to the side of them. Now, the Super PowerGate PG40 is basically an uninterruptible power switching device. You hook your power supply to it, you hook a battery to it, and you go out from there to your Rig Runner or to your radio. And if you lose AC power, it'll automatically switch over to your battery, and you'll never miss a beat. So these things are awesome to have. Now, the Rig Runners, the two that I want to tell you about, one of them is the Rig Runner 4008. It provides you with 40 amps of DC power coming in, spread over 8 slots. Each one of those slots are individually fused. The other one is the 4007U. It also gives you 40 amps coming in, but it's only over 7 slots. But it has some extra features, things like a digital load meter, a USB charging port, as well as a solid-state push-button on-off switch, and an automatic shut-off for high and low voltages. Both these are mounted onto the side of the DC-to-go box. All you have to do is drop the battery in, hook up the leads, and you're ready to go. These two are very well priced. The 4008 is $249.95. The 4007U is $269.95. I highly recommend you go with the 4007U. Now, if these are out of your price range, you can custom make your own. There are some other pre-made ones that are cheaper. So head on over to everythinghamradio.com/WMR, and there is a way to get a special free gift. You can get a USB power monitor with your purchase if you use the code on that website. So head on over there. Again, the address is everythinghamradio.com/WMR to find out how to get your special gift when you buy one of these DC-to-go boxes, Rig Runner, Rig Blaster, or anything else that they sell. So thank you again, West Mountain Radio, and let's get back to talking with Kevin about the International DX Beacon Network. All right, we are back. Again, we are talking with Kevin Rowett, Kilo 6 Tango Delta, a board member with the Northern California DX Foundation. And let's talk a little bit about the International Beacon Project. This is actually what kind of caught my eye when I approached you to do this interview. What exactly is the Beacon Project?
Yeah, so it's a way to determine propagation, how good propagation is from a specific location around the world at your location. So the idea is pretty easy. There's 18 beacons spread around the world. And if you look at the map on the Foundation website, you will see the location of the beacons, but you'll see they're pretty well spread at lots of countries. The idea is the frequencies are there, so you turn your radio to, for example, 14.100 in the 20-meter band, and over the next 3 minutes, you will hear a CWID from all the beacons. If propagations from those locations are supported. So, for example, hear it all the time, day or night. There's also one on Maui in Hawaii. I can hear it during the day, but I can't at night. There's one in South Africa, ZS6 David Name. You hear that in the evenings. So I can very quickly tune in from over a 3 to 6 minute interval. I can figure out where propagation is good to. So that's the basic idea behind it. Is it gives you a quick way to figure out is there propagation or not.
So are these beacons like all in the same frequency, or each beacon a different frequency, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's an interesting twist that we did. So originally there was just one beacon that was deployed here in Northern California at Stanford University, and that worked well, and that led to saying, how many beacons could we deploy? And so basically, Dave Leeson, November 6th, November Lima, came up with a scheme whereby we deployed 18 beacons, and each beacon will transmit once every 3 minutes on the same frequency. So it's if you count up the beacons and you count up 10 seconds intervals for each beacon, you come to 3 minutes. So a beacon is on the air once every 3 minutes for 10 seconds. So what it does is it sends its call sign at 22 words per minute at the beginning of its time, and then it will send a series of 4 dashes, 1 second each. The first dash is 100 watts, and then 10 watts, and then 1 watt, and then 100 milliwatts. So it also gives you an indication of how strong the band is. So when it finishes, then the next beacon, in turn, based on the table we have, begins to transmit. So this means you can just listen to one frequency and hear all the beacons, or as many beacons as you can possibly hear due to propagation.
So you said 100 watts, 10 watts, 1 watt, and 100 milliwatts. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Interesting. So I guess they're all like synced together, where there's not going to be like any beacon walking on any other beacon.
Yeah, and that's an interesting part of the piece. So we actually use a GPS receiver at each beacon location to get the correct time of day. Most people know GPS is good for finding your path with Google Maps, because there's a GPS receiver in your phone. But GPS is also very good for getting the correct time of day. And that's actually how GPS works, is it figures out the correct time of day and then figures out how far you are away from the satellite, which determines your position. So we actually have a GPS receiver, as I said, at each location that allows each one of the controllers to be sure it knows the correct time of day. And then from that, it figures out what slot in the 3-minute map that we've assigned to it. And so when its slot time comes around, it starts transmitting. And that way, they're all within less than a second timing of each other, and nobody steps on anyone.
Wow. So what frequencies do the beacons transmit on?
Yeah, so they transmit on what's classically called the high band HF set of bands. Excuse me. So the frequency on 20 meters is 14.100. On 17 meters, it's 18.110. On 15 meters, it's 21.150. On 12 meters, it's 24.930. And then on 10 meters, it's 28.200.
So it does it do it on a 40 or 80 or 30 or anything like that?
No, it doesn't. We did not go to the low bands because the building a low band antenna is a pretty big undertaking, and they tend to be pretty big, and it was difficult enough keeping the HF high band HF antennas working.
Right. So are each of these beacons like privately deployed and hooked to your network, or do y'all pay for it and have somebody put it up, or what? How does that work?
Yeah, so like everything else in ham radio, it's 100% volunteer. So the Northern California DX Foundation funded the development and the design of the controllers. By funded, I mean that they basically paid for the parts and the shipping. Nobody was paid to actually go design it. It was done by November 6 Echo Kilo many years ago, the original set in 1988. And there were 18 stations around the world identified that were willing to host a beacon. They were basically private stations. Some of them were certainly government stations, but a private individual, a ham, ran them. So we identified the people, sent the equipment to them, and then they took care of putting it up and maintaining it. And over the years, the individual operators have been the ones that have maintained it. Certainly from the foundation, as equipment wears out or breaks down or gets hit by lightning, we would actually send them replacement equipment. But oftentimes the local operator took care of repairing the equipment when it failed. So interestingly enough, in our world these days, being highly connected, you can't get away from being connected.
Right.
The beacons grew up in an era before the internet existed, and before cell phones. Before you could carry a cell phone, you had to have a card to move it around. And so they're not really connected to the internet or anything else. They're very much just a simple standalone unit with a standard ham radio transmitter, a custom controller, and a power supply and an antenna. And that's it. It doesn't take much to get them on the air. They do their thing.
Very neat.
Interesting locations. So we tried to make sure there was one in all the continents except for Antarctica. We did not get one there, but we did get one in every other continent. And we tried to make sure there was only one in each country and that they were scattered across big land masses. But interestingly enough, there's actually two in North America, or actually three in North America, one in the very far north of Canada, one here in California, and then the third one is in New York, but it's technically not the United States. It's on top of the United Nations building, which, as you know, is not in the United States. Mm-hmm. So it's technically in the United Nations. So we get to count that as another country.
And then, that call sign is actually, it looks like 4 Union 1 Union Nora. Where does that come from?
4 Uniform 1 Uniform Nancy. So 4U1 is the prefix assigned to the United Nations.
Cool.
So the United Nations is considered a separate country, okay, because it doesn't have, it really doesn't exist in any one country. So there's United Nations buildings in New York, in Switzerland, and in Brussels, and so they're considered a separate country. So the 4U1 is the United Nations prefix, and the UN is specifically for the United Nations building in New York City.
Very interesting.
It is. We also have a one in Hong Kong. We have one in Sri Lanka, Finland, Madeira, New Zealand, Australia, Venezuela, the LU4, Brazil, and where's the other one? Oh, we have one in Israel, in Japan, Russia. So,
wow.
So it's a good sized network of things, and you can reasonably do this. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a couple different ways. So you can certainly listen to it and determine what you hear, and many people do that. But the reverse beacon network has kind of supplanted people just turning it on and listening. There is software that will actually listen for you and then give you a map back over 24, 48 hours showing you what beacons it heard when and how well it heard them. And interestingly enough, the software called Pharos will actually tell you whether it heard the beacon by a short path or by a long path.
Wow.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's interesting because a number of people run this, and they send me the data for it along with Peter Benning, and they come back often and say, wow, they were surprised that propagation was open in some cases that they didn't expect to. So it's gotten people to think differently, or at least realize that even during this low sun cycle time, propagation is better than they expect it to be.
Very interesting. So how did the beacon network actually get started?
Yeah. So Jack Trotster, one of the original founders of the Northern California DX Foundation, in 1974, his call sign is W6ISQ, and he's currently a silent key, said, gee, this would be interesting. What had happened is somebody had decided to deploy beacons in the Alaskan Sea up north to find fishing boats that were disappearing. And they thought this was interesting. The beacons at that time, the deployable floating ones, cost $25,000. And he said, I bet I can build it for less than $1,000. And in fact, he did. And the first one was put up in Northern California at Stanford University and got many, many reports around the world. And that was sort of the early, and this is in 1974, long before the internet was close to becoming more prevalent. So it was a good form of communication, and his signal were all postcards or telephone calls, no email. And so he realized there's something here that would be more interesting. So Jack and Dave Leeson, November Lima, a very famous HF ham and a Stanford PhD, got together along with November 6 Echo Kilo in about 1988 and said, we should be able to deploy this in a better way. And that's how the group of 18 beacons got formed in the 3-minute interval. So from that, a group of people volunteered, got together, built the units, got them deployed. and that's what you see today.
Wow.
We're actually in the middle of what we call a version 2 modernization program. Um, about half the beacons are off the air right now due to equipment failures. And so we're in the process. We designed a brand new controller um, and deployed a new radio. The radios that we use, the TS50s, are no longer in production. Very difficult to get repaired these days. So we've gone to an ICOM IC7200. ICOM has become a very good supporter of the beacons. Designed a new controller and are in the process of deploying new versions of the controller to all of the 18 sites so that they'll be on the air for another 30 years.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like a really, really awesome thing. I'm actually kind of antsy now to get my my HF system set up here. I've lived at my house now for almost a year, and I'm sad to say that I don't even have my tower up yet. It's still sitting on the ground from when we moved, and I'm just barely getting my recording studio set up right now. But it's actually really making me want to just go out there and dig the hole, even though it's like 8:30 at night here.
It took me, I moved to a new house about 14 years ago. It took me a year and a half to get the tower back up. So it's not the first priority when you move to a house.
Right, yeah, especially when you have 4 or 5 kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So that the beacon system, it sounds awesome, and it's a great idea. Unfortunately, that he's the original maker of there is SK now, but I would pass on to him. Thank you, but so thank y'all for all that you do in maintaining and putting this up. I'm sure that people use it all the time. Is there anything else that you want to say about the beacon project that we didn't cover?
I would say the one interesting piece is if you go to the ncdxf.org website, click on the Beacons tab. There is a tremendous amount of information about the beacon, including a very detailed history and things that let you listen to the beacons currently as if they are, as well as antenna headings. It's just tons of stuff there. It gives you a good map. So if you're curious more about the beacons, then go to the www.ncdxf.org and click the Beacons tab. I think the one last thing I would say is the internet has given rise, along with a product called CW Skimmer, has given rise to what's called the reverse beacon network. This is a network of receivers that are always on the air listening for people calling CQ on CW. And as soon as they do, it gets reported as a DX spot. So people ask the question, so why do we need the beacon network still if we've got the reverse beacon network? Well, the beacon network answers the question, is the band dead or is nobody calling CQ? Mm-hmm. So that's the primary reason that we've continued with the beacons, because they're always on the air. So if you hear them, that means the band is open in that direction, and maybe you just need to call CQ and you'll raise some contacts.
Right. Alrighty, well, we're going to go ahead and take another quick break here, and we will be right back with Kevin. So, are you looking to purchase some QSL cards, or maybe some station swag type stuff? Head on over to KB3IHF QSL cards. He has a great set of QSL cards as well as some other swag stuff. He sent me a coaster with my Everything Ham Radio podcast logo on it this past week. Thank you very much, Randy, for that. I really appreciate it. I've actually put it to good use already. I have my drink sitting on one of those coasters as we speak. But if you want some QSL cards or anything else, make sure you head on over to his website. You can go to it at everythinghamradio.com/QSL cards. It's all one word, QSL cards. And it'll take you to his website. When you order your QSL cards, make sure that you mention that you heard from him from the Everything Ham Radio podcast. If you do, I'll get a small commission on your purchase. So I am actually working on some of the swag stuff as well, selling it for him through an affiliate type thing. So stay tuned further for more information on that. But if you're looking for QSL cards, go and get it from Randy. He does an awesome job. And look forward to getting some of the other stuff as well. So stay tuned for that. Let's go ahead and wrap up the interview with with Kevin. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the scholarships programs that he has, how you can contribute to it, and some other topics. So let's get back to the interview. All right, y'all, we are back with Kevin, K6TD, and we've talked a little bit about the foundation. We've talked about the DX funding. Let's talk a little bit more about what the foundation does and kind of some off-topic questions, I guess you can say, that I just kind of been thinking about while we've been talking.
Sure.
First off, I noticed on y'all's website that y'all do scholarships. Now, is that for like ham teens that are going to college, or what is that exactly?
No, this is primarily for people to go on, for young people to go on de-expeditions or trips to places where they're going to be the target of a contest, as well as be able to attend specific things that we call DX University and Contest University at big ham conventions, where they can learn more in depth about how to operate as a DX participant or operate in a contest.
That sounds like it would be a really interesting thing for anybody to do, not just like younger people. So
well,
go ahead.
Yeah, younger people tend to need a little help in the cash department.
Some of us older ones do too. So how did the scholarship get started?
I think this was originally done as a board discussion point. W6 Echo Nancy decided that he wanted to produce an endowment of about $25,000 to fund scholarships of this type, and he wasn't sure exactly where to take it to at first, but he settled on the Northern California DX Foundation, since he's known about the foundation for many years, and asked the foundation to manage this scholarship fund in terms of distributing the money, making sure it goes to people that fit the requirements, and good use is made of the money.
So when did it start?
The first donation was made in 1998, I believe.
Wow, so it's actually been going on quite a while.
Yes, it has.
So I noticed here on the website, under the scholarship page, that it actually, the last time anything is listed is 2012. Did y'all stop giving some scholarships for a little bit, or is that just a website error type thing?
No, what happened in 2013 is we changed to actually tuition scholarships for going to different like the Contest Academy and the DX University programs, as well as travel places. So we could change the way the money was spent, hoping to get more interesting people to be able to participate in the hobby directly, so that they could find out what amateur radio is like and go from there.
Okay.
The idea being is that if a younger person who has an interest in ham radio is encouraged to participate in ham radio activities and meet other people like that, then they're more than likely to be a continued member of the ham radio organization.
So what qualifies a young person for this scholarship?
Interest in ham radio, we prefer that they've been licensed for a year or two, and especially we like them to be interested in HF type activities. Not solely, but certainly interested in HF activities.
So easy enough qualifications. So any of y'all young people out there listening that are looking for some kind of DX education, I guess you could say, here is a great place. So just go to ncdxf.org and scroll all the way down to the bottom. It's like the second to last option on their menu, and check that out and see if you can get a scholarship there. So how can the everyday ham, or non-ham for that matter, how can they contribute to not only the scholarships but to de-expeditions and stuff like that?
Yeah, so You can contribute directly. Cash usually helps expeditions, and in particular, Northern California DX Foundation, as we build the funds. And there's buttons on our website that let you go to a contribution page, and you can contribute cash or whatever other forms you have. We generally don't take equipment because that takes a lot of labor to turn into cash, which is the only way we can do anything for expeditions. But cash and services are the things that we like contributed. Contributing to a DXpedition itself, they generally like cash, but they do take lots of forms of equipment. There's often a list of sponsors that are there, and they're always in need of manpower to help them do something. For a DXpedition, there's always something to be done on what we call the non-trip group of people. Fundraising, publishing, setting up and testing equipment, locating equipment, working with other sponsors, speaking about the DXpedition to clubs to help them understand what the DXpedition is about and see if they might want to contribute. So volunteer and cash can help DXpedition, sorry. And generally, if you go to a site by the name of DX Coffee, www.dxcoffee.net or dxsummit.net, you'll find a list of current DXpeditions that are looking for help and funding. And they'll take you to their website by clicking a button there with a URL link. And the site will describe what the DXpedition is, who's on the team, and what kind of help they're looking for and how they might ask you to contribute.
You just answered my next question. So, how or what makes a DXpedition eligible to be funded by your foundation?
Yeah. So there's a handful of criteria that we do. One is it has to be a DXpedition associated with an HF activity. There are a number of trips to other things, like 6-meter trips and things of that sort. There's IOTA trips, as they're called, Islands on the Air. We generally don't fund those. It has to be associated with an HF country because the goal of DX is to work somebody in every one of the countries out there. So the first thing is it's got to be an HX activity. The second thing, it's got to be within the top 25 of the most wanted countries or entities as listed on the Club Log website.
Okay.
A site that's below 25 is going to get visited probably frequently in the next 5 years, and so there's no reason for us to fund it. Ones that are higher up on the list, 25 and up in terms of most wanted, they generally get visited once every 10 years at the most. Sometimes longer, and if you're in the top 5, you're probably visited once only every 25 years. So, so the need in terms of most wanted is there, and then the third criteria is does the group really need cash from us? Like I said, we'll sometimes provide as much as $50,000, which is 2 or 3 operators worth of money, as well as our endorsement. Because we've looked at the trip and said, yes, we think this has a chance of success. And that causes other people to contribute to it. But there are destinations that are easy to get to, and that we call these fly-in locations. And the cost of that is almost always borne by the participants or the members that travel on the trip. Because a fly-in expedition doesn't cost anywhere near what it does cost to sail somewhere. Mm-hmm. Fly-in expeditions are rare. There are plenty of fly-in locations that are in the top 25. They're that rare because it's hard to get permission to operate there, and so consequently, the challenge is to get to operate. But if you get permission to operate, then getting there is no trouble at all. For example, North Korea. It's easy to get to North Korea. It's just you can't operate there. Things of that sort. So we tend not to fund those because we're not rich. We're all made up of donations, and we want to make sure the money goes to those types of operations that are going to cost a lot and are rare.
Okay. So when somebody makes a contribution to your foundation, I'm sure it looks like there's different levels that people have donated throughout the years. Is there anything that if I make a $5,000 donation or something like that, is there anything that I will get back from y'all? A certificate, a T-shirt, anything like that?
Oh, we'll definitely give you a T-shirt. We'll definitely give you a T-shirt. We haven't made most of the people who make contributions don't ask to get listed on our webpage, so we haven't really done much of that. But major contributors do. So you see if you donated at least $5,000, then you're going to get listed on our major contribution or benefactors webpage. And there are clubs that do that. So the Northern California DX Club usually donates on the order of $3,000 to $6,000 every other year to the foundation.
Wow.
As a result of proceeds of running the Visalia DX convention. Let's see. You also get, if you're a U.S. citizen, a certificate that says that you can give the IRS that says you donated to a charitable organization that's tax exempt.
Oh, so y'all are, what is that, 803?
501c. Yeah, we are a 501c organization, so your contributions are tax exempt, and we will give you an official letter indicating that.
Cool. Alrighty.
And our thanks, as well as our newsletter.
Absolutely. Yeah, I might have to look into that newsletter for sure. What do I have to do to get on that?
You can read the newsletter from the website. It's on the newsletter button, Northern California DX, ncdxf.org, and click the newsletter button.
Okay.
If you become a member by donating, contributing to the foundation, then you'll get the newsletter emailed to you monthly, or actually quarterly, I think, at this point.
Cool. Now, I do know that y'all do have a store as well that people can buy stuff. I'm guessing that goes towards funding as well.
Yes, it does, although people often want the things that we have available. And so, people do want a pin that says they supported the foundation, things of that sort, the T-shirts that we offer, things like that. So it's items that people have asked us for, and so we said, yeah,
cool.
We'll put it on there as a store for people to get.
Cool. So I thought of a question here. I'm going to kind of go back a little bit to the last segment when we were talking about the DX editions. What do you know is what kind of like programs or software or something like that somebody can use to I don't know, maybe listen to the beacons or to get reports from the beacons or anything other than just a regular standard HF radio?
HF radio is certainly needed. The two principal pieces of software, one is Pharos, which is a piece of software written that will actually manually tune your radio and then tell you what stations it has heard and how well it heard them, so you can get a map over time that shows you what stations have been heard. So it automatically decodes the CW signal coming in and then records how well it heard it, and then it'll give you a map. Another great program is DX Monitor, done by Victor Echo 3 Sierra Uniform Nancy. This one gives you a good display, shows you which beacons you should be hearing right now. So you have to listen to the CW call signs yourself to figure it out. But it tells you which beacon should be active on which band at what time. And it'll automatically tune your radio so that you can either follow a beacon or follow a particular piece of geography. And on the ncdxf.org website, there is a listing of things called Tools for Listeners. It has an extensive listing of all the different applications that the foundation knows about for listening to the beacons.
Wow. Yeah, I'm actually looking at that list right now. There's things for Linux, for Windows, even for DOS, for your iPhone, for your Android phone. There's a bunch of information on there. So if any of y'all out there are interested in looking at tools and programs and stuff like that for beacon listening, make sure you check out their website for sure. There's a lot of stuff on there. So I guess the last thing I want to talk about, I noticed, and I'm like I said, I'm not a real big HF fan, or not fan, but operator, I guess you could say.
Yes.
Yeah. I noticed on your website there's a link. It says Cycle 25 Fund. Now I'm assuming that is for Cycle 25 of the Sunspot cycle. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Can you tell us a little bit about this fund that y'all have? What it's for?
Yeah. So Cycle 25, we currently are on the downside of Cycle 24, which is related to the amount of sunspot activity. The cycles are denoted by the number of sunspots that the sun has, and we're currently in days of no sunspots at all, which generally lowers propagation quite a bit. 10 meters isn't very active these days. I don't think I've heard Europe for a year on 10 meters. At the height of a sunspot cycle, propagation is open everywhere, sometimes very late at night. All the bands are open. So we're at the very low point, and we'll probably reach bottom in another year, and then we'll begin climbing back up to more sunspots and better propagation into what we call Cycle 25. Our president of the foundation, Tom Burson, November Delta 2 Tango, observed that the amount of money we spend tends to climb as the sunspot numbers climb. And he said, 25 could be good, but we should be prepared for it. So to boost the funding within the foundation to make sure we had enough cash to pay for expeditions, he started what he called was the Cycle 25 Fund, which is an activity to bring a new fund of money into the foundation to make sure that there is enough money to pay for ambitious and rare expeditions. So that's the rationale, the name behind the fund. We expect Cycle 25 to peak in about 6-7 years, maybe 8 years from now. So we have plenty of time to build up the fund. But we do know people are already starting to think about where they're going to go in 3 or 4 years, because the rising side of a sunspot cycle is better than the falling side. Mm-hmm. So in about 3 or 4 years, we expect people to go. And so we're looking for people to specifically make, if you will, major contributions to the Cycle 25 Fund. On the Cycle 25 website, we talk about estate planning commitments. So you'll see a list of people that have made an estate commitment, which means that a portion of their estate, when they pass on, will become part of the Cycle 25 Fund. And we already have one individual who did pass on and contribute to that, Bruce Butler, November 6, Oscar Sierra Papa. Bruce was actually, he was president of the foundation for 10 years, and he passed on about 4 years ago. But so we're looking for people to make a major contribution, mention us in your wills, set up an annuity for it, and we have people available to help figure out how to do that if a person wants to do that.
All right. Yeah, I'm looking at the page. On the page here, it has a graph of all the last 5 sunspot cycles, and I'm looking here, and I'm looking back at 2000, and I think I've probably told this story before on this podcast, but back in like 2000, I think, when the Olympics was in Australia, they had a special event station set up there. And my local ham club, we had a camping trip, a club camp out on one of the weekends that the Olympics was going on. And we set up a radio out there, and we were, just kind of messing around and dialing through the band, and actually heard the Australian special event station for the Olympics go up, and we actually made contact with them on 10 meters. And I'm looking at the thing. I mean, it looks like it's right there at the very peak of Cycle 23 when that happened.
Cycle 23 was good. Cycle 23 was good. Cycle 24 was pretty weak. we're worried about cycle 25. In the 1500s, there was what's called a Maunder minimum, where there was 70-year period where there were almost no sunspots at all. And obviously there was no hams at that time, but if you look at that chart on our webpage, you will see that the peaks are diminishing over time, and the cycle 24 was very, very late starting, to the point where we weren't sure it was going to start. We thought we'd already begun a cycle of no sunspots for many years. It did actually start, but it was pretty weak. 25 is predicted to be lower, and the positive.
Yeah, it's almost as if the cycles have a cycle of themselves, because back in 1980 or so, it was like way off the chart on like way up to 60, whatever that side, I guess solar activity, I guess number of sunspots maybe. Is that what that number's for? Do you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, way back in 1980, it was like at the top of this chart, and it's every cycle it's gone down. Looks like anywhere between 10 and 15
points.
Points in the activity every year, and cycle 26 back up in 2030 does not look good.
There is one aspect that they have learned about predicting the strength of the sunspot cycles, and that is they have no ability to do that.
Just like predicting the weather.
Yep. So they're getting better at it, but as you see the longer view, you see, okay, there is a bigger cycle involved in the sun's activity.
Well, I think that's pretty much all the questions I have. Is there anything that we have not covered that you would like to talk about?
De-expeditioning and chasing DX is a wonderful thing to do. It's a passion. It's sort of like, how dare you call my passion a hobby? So,
right.
Just do, always someone to help, and come on in.
Well, Kevin, thank you very much for coming onto this podcast, and I look forward to hearing some of the comments that each of y'all have out there. If you have any questions, I'm sure Kevin would be happy to answer them. Kevin, is it okay if we give him your email address or some way to contact the foundation if anybody has any questions?
Yep. I can give you my email address right now if you'd like.
Go right ahead.
It's Kevin at Rowett, ROWETT.org. And of course, K6TD at ARRL.net works as well.
Alrighty. Well, Kevin, like I said, thanks again, and I do appreciate you coming on this show with us today and telling us all about the Northern California DX Foundation, the International Beacon Project, and everything else that we've talked about. So I guess 73 to you, sir.
73 is Curtis. Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Yep, bye.
All right, so again, I want to thank Kevin Rowett, K6TD, for coming on to the show today. For more information about the Northern California DX Foundation, you can find it again at ncdxf.org. If you want to make a contribution to the foundation to help with future DX expeditions, you can find information on that as well on their website. So, let's go ahead and move on with the episode today. In our ham blog spotlight, I found a really neat little project on YouTube, a YouTube video produced by Ham Radio Concepts. The host there is Eric KJ4YZI, and the video was featuring the BlueStack Micro Plus and the DV Mega hotspot for DSAR, DMR, and Fusion. It's one of his 3 hotspot videos that he's done that will work on all 3 of the digital formats in amateur radio. So if you want to head on over to the show notes of today's episode, the YouTube video is embedded in the show notes, and you can find a link to it on YouTube as well. And at the end of the video, he mentions that he's going to do another video that will feature all 3 of them that he's done. Like I said, this is a 3rd one that he's done. that will have all three of the projects that will work on D-Star, DMR, and Fusion. Super easy way to have a hotspot to work on all three digital modes. So make sure you head on over to the show notes, check out that video. Again, you can find that at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/62. Scroll down about halfway down the show notes and you'll see it there. So let's go ahead and move on with our upcoming events. Alrighty, so in our upcoming events, we have a few of them listed for the next couple weeks, and actually one of them I'm going to try and get a interview with for next episode. I haven't heard back from them about it, but I hope to hear something back this week and have another interview next week. All the times that I'm going to be mentioning are in Zulu time, so make sure you adjust accordingly to your local time zone. So let's get started. First off, we have the 15-meter slow scan TV dash contest that is on April 1st from 0 hours to the 2nd at 23:59. LZ Open 40-meter sprint contest on April the 1st from 400 to 800 hours. The Missouri QSO Party goes on April the 1st from 1400 hours to 400 hours on the 2nd, then follows up from 1400 hours to 2000 hours on the 2nd as well. Next up is the Mississippi QSO Party. It is on April the 1st from 1400 hours to the 2nd at 200 hours. The SPDX contest is on the 1st from 1500 to the 2nd at 1500. We have the EARTTY contest on April the 1st as well, from 1600 to the 2nd at 1600. The North American Single Sideband Sprint contest on April the 2nd, from 0 hours to 400 hours. The ARS Spartan Sprint is on April the 4th, from 100 to 300 hours. The SARL 80-meter QSO Party on April the 6th, from 1700 hours to 2000 hours. Next up is the JIDX CW contest. It is on April the 8th from 700 hours to April the 9th at 1300. The QRP ARCI Spring QSO Party is on April the 8th from 1200 hours to the 9th at 23:59. Next up we have the Texas State Parks on the Air. It is on April the 8th from 1400 hours to the 9th at 200 hours, followed by from 1400 hours to 2000 hours also on the 9th. We have the New Mexico QSO Party on the 8th from 1400 hours to April the 9th at 200 hours. And next up we have the Georgia QSO Party on April the 8th from 1800 hours to 3:59 on the 9th, and then followed up from 1400 hours to 23:59. We have the Yuri Gagarin International DX Contest, April the 8th from 2100 hours to April the 9th at 2100 hours. The International Vintage Contest on HF will be April the 9th from 700 hours to 1100 hours, and on from 1300 hours to 1900 hours. And last but definitely not least, we have the Hungarian Straight Key Contest for all y'all Straight Key CW people out there. And that is on the 9th from 1500 to 1700 hours. All the information was taken from the WA7 BNM contest calendar, which you can find a link to in the show notes of today's episode. Let's move on to hamfests. Alright, so hamfest for the next 2 weeks. On this Friday, which is tomorrow as of the recording release date, March 31st, we have the Maine State Convention in Lewiston, Maine. We have the Nevada State Convention in VCon in Las Vegas, Nevada. On the 1st of April, we have the April Fool's Fest in Noble, Illinois. We have the Columbus, Indiana Hamfest in Columbus, Indiana. Hanging Judge Hamfest in Fort Smith, Arkansas. The LARC Fest in Longmont, Colorado. Lincoln Trail ARC's 38th Annual Hamfest in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. The MCAC/MAARS Swap Fest in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We also have the Portsmouth Radio Club Hamfest in Portsmouth, Ohio. The next weekend, on the 7th, we have the Oklahoma Section Convention, Greene County Hamfest in Claremore, Oklahoma. We have OzarkCon QRP Conference in Branson, Missouri. On the 8th, we have the CFARC 63rd Annual Hamfest in Cuyahoga. I'm not even sure how to say that. Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. We have the Gulf Coast Amateur Radio Club Annual Hamfest in Hudson, Florida. That is the new date. I believe this one was canceled a couple months ago because of weather. I believe it was what it was. This is the new date for it. We have the Memphis Free Fest in Bartlett, Tennessee. The Mobile Hamfest in Mobile, Alabama. No, it's not mobile. It's in Mobile. And we have the PCARC Seacoast Flea Market in Hampton, New Hampshire. And last but not least, we have the Yakima Hamfest in Selah, Washington. All the information on the Hamfest was taken from the ARRL Hamfest calendar, which you can find the links to in the show notes of today's episode. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the news. All right, so in the news, on the ARRL newsfeed, there is a article that was posted on the 23rd of February. The NVIS research paper is available. A thorough and fully annotated discussion of near-vertical indices skywave, or NIVIS, is available in the research paper. Radio communications via near-vertical indices I can't even say that word. Good gravy. Skywave propagation, an overview by Ben Wivleet, PE5B/5R8DS, and Rosa. Good gravy. I'm sorry. I'm like butchering these names, but I'm not even going to say them. First investigated in the 1920s, NIVIS propagation was rediscovered during World War II as an essential means to establish communication in large war zones such as the D-Day invasion in Normandy. The paper notes, adding that the U.S. Army subsequently sponsored a lot of NIVIS field research, especially between 1966 and 1973. More recently, NIVIS has become popular means of enable close-in communications for amateur radio HF bands between 3 and 10 megahertz. NIVIS can be used for radio communications in a large area, approximately 200 kilometer radius, without any intermediate man-made infrastructure, and it has been found to be especially suited for disaster relief communication, among other applications, according to the paper. A comprehensive overview of NIVIS research is given, covering propagation, antennas, diversity, modulation, and coding. Both the bigger picture and the important details are given, as well as the relation between them. As the paper describes it, in NIVIS propagation, electromagnetic waves are sent nearly vertical towards the ionosphere, and with the appropriate frequency selection, these waves are reflected back to Earth. The great reflection height of 80 to 350 kilometers results in a large footprint and homogeneous field strength across that footprint. Due to the steep radiation angles, large objects such as mountain slopes and high buildings cannot block the radio path. As for NIVIS antenna, the paper stipulates that important parameters are antenna diagrams, polarization, and bandwidth, as only high-level angles contribute to NIVIS propagation. Optimizing the antenna diagram for these elevations will increase the effectively transmitted power and improve the signal-to-interference ratio at reception. A couple episodes ago, I want to say like 4 or 5 episodes ago, over on the Ham Radio 360 podcast, he interviewed a gentleman by the name of Ed Fong, WB6IQN, and they talked about NIVs, and it was a very awesome article. If you don't listen to the Ham Radio 360, there is a podcast. There is a link in the show notes under the news section there to this individual episode. If you do listen to it and you didn't hear it, or you want to re-listen to it or whatever, go back. I believe it's like 4 or 5 episodes now as of the end of March. So check that out if you haven't already. And let's see. Next up, we have, this is actually part of, or has something to do with one of the hamfests we talked about a little bit ago. This one reads, Mayors, Commissioners of Clark County, Nevada salute amateur radio. Another story, basically, that I found over the past couple of weeks that amateur radio operators are getting, finally getting the recognition they deserve. I think, and a lot of times we don't get that recognition. But this is what it reads. This was released on the 24th, again on the ARRL newsfeed. Nevada Mayor Carolyn Goodman of Las Vegas, John Lee of North Las Vegas, and Andy Haffen of Henderson have joined the Clark County Board of Commissioners in proclaiming March 26th through April the 2nd as NVCON Week, recognizing the ARRL Nevada State Convention, which is on March 31st through April the 2nd. The community leaders encourage the citizens of their respective localities to pay tribute to the area amateur radio operators. Nevada radio amateurs will convene in Las Vegas for NVCon. The state is home to more than 7,600 radio amateurs, many of whom provide communication support during emergencies, disasters, and public events. Featured speakers at NVCon will be noted Youth Activities Program creator and mentor Carol Perry, WB2MGP, amateur radio educator Gordon West, WB6NOA. If you don't know who Gordon West is, you don't know amateur radio. And FEMA Individual Assistance Division Director Christopher Smith, local TV meteorologist and kids author Kevin Jennison will also speak. So like I said, this is another time that amateur radio people are getting recognized, and to have a full week recognized for the NVCon, or the Nevada Convention, basically what that stands for, is awesome. You know? Okay, so last up, a little bit of sad note. The Sunnyvale ham radio outlet signed off for its final time Wednesday after 26 years as a hub for Silicon Valley amateur radio community. Due in part to rising rent in the city, the outlet at 510 Lawrence Expressway chose to close its doors and merge operations with its Oakland location, according to shop employees. Steve Gilmore, national sales manager for Ham Radio Outlet, stated on the store's website that changes needed to be made in its Northern California locations. Some of the costs associated with operating in the Sunnyvale location have absolutely skyrocketed, and the traffic and parking availability in our current Sunnyvale location has become seriously problematic, Gilmore's statement read. Store manager John Kelly told the newspaper that the rising minimum wage in the region also factored into the decision to consolidate stores. Kelly said the shop was a destination for radio enthusiasts locally and from around the globe. Business came from locals, but plenty of visitors in the area for job training or business trips at nearby tech companies would often drop in. We have a lot of regulars that come in, he says. It's nearly as much as a clubhouse as it is a store, which is okay sometimes, but less okay other times. On the store's last day, a printed sign on the door read, "Hey guys, your wife called and said you can buy anything you want, and you better hurry," scrawled under it in pen. You know, it's kind of sad that, Ham Radio Outlet just purchased some of the AES stores, the Milwaukee one especially, I believe it was, and here they're closing one. It's sad, but I can understand too, because, if rent tripled and minimum wage and all that, I can understand it, but it's sad that one of the ham radio outlet stores has to close. There is furthermore in the article. I'm not going to read it all. It's actually taken from a newspaper article. Yeah. So, sorry, ham radio outlet, for y'all losing a store, and for the local hams in the area that y'all do not have access to it anymore. And that pretty much wraps up the episode for today. So again, I would like to thank Kevin for coming on to the show today. I want to thank each and every one of y'all for listening. This podcast would not be here if it was not for you. Well, I might make it, but nobody would listen to it. So I enjoy doing this podcast. My wife, not so much, because she's always saying, do you really have to do that tonight? But I do it for y'all. And without y'all, there's no reason for me to do it. So thank you very much for all of y'all's support, all y'all's comments and questions that you've done, and financial support, and just being there, just listening. Thank you very much for that. I absolutely appreciate everything that everybody does. If you would like to learn how to support this podcast financially, there are several ways you can do it. You can make a one-time donation through PayPal. You can become a monthly contributor through Patreon. Actually, it's per episode now, not a monthly thing. And you can also shop through my affiliate links on Amazon, as well as buy stuff from KB3IHF. Again, if you do, make sure that you mention that you heard from about him on the Everything Ham Radio podcast, and I will get a small commission. You can find more information about it on the support page at everythinghamradio.com/support. If you have not done so already, please think about subscribing to my email list. Super easy to do. Basically, all I do is send out an email every once in a while, and also anytime I publish a new blog post, which is on very rare occasions anymore, and a new podcast episode. You can go to the show notes of today's episode. There's a form on the bottom you can fill out, or you can go to everythinghamradio.com/subscribe. Once you fill out the form, click on the Sign Me Up button. You'll get an email from me with a link that you'll need to click on before you'll actually start receiving emails from me. I hate spam as much as anybody does, so I promise you I will not sell or rent your email address to anyone, and I will not send a whole bunch of emails your way. Again, you can find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page at facebook.com/everythinghamradio. I have a new group that I'm starting up that I wish I would have done in the first place, that you can find at facebook.com/groups/everythinghamradio. I'm on YouTube at youtube.com/everythinghamradio, and on Twitter, which is where I'm most active on, at K6TD. So that pretty much wraps it up. So until next time, this is K6TD signing out. 73, y'all.